Hi, my name is Gideon. I'm also known as Gideon Slide, and I'm your Creatively Fit coach. So in this episode, we're going to be talking about brushes. I'm going to be explaining to you the dynamics of a brush, everything that you need to know about a brush, how to load your brush with paint, and how to use your brush for mark making at the canvas. So join me in my studio now as I talk to you all about brushes. So in my setup here, I've dispensed some of my heavy body paint on my tear off palette, and I've got 2 jars of water that will be needed to rinse my brush. Now let's talk about brushes. This really is important just to understand the basic parts of a brush so that when we talk about them that you know exactly what we are referring to. So this is called a filbert, and a filbert really just means it's a square brush with a rounded tip, but you can see when I turn it that it's quite flat. So we are talking about the anatomy of the brush. So this is the handle, this is the crimp, this is the ferrule, this is the heel, the belly and the toe. Not important to remember at all, but next time I talk about painting on the toe of your brush, you will understand exactly what I mean. Also, it's very important to try and not to get too much paint in the heel of your brush. The paint only goes into the belly of your brush. So when you do clean your brushes, and I'll be talking about brush care in a later video, it is very important to try and get all of your paint out from the heel of your brush in order to prolong the life of your brush. Right, so I've got a little bit of a canvas here, and I want to just demonstrate to you how to load your brush correctly with paint. So when your brush is dry like this, it is a good idea to have a rag ready as well. I want you to wet your brush and drag off the excess water in your water jar or water container. Now a brush like this, when you've dipped it in water, has about 2 drops of water in it, and that will improve the fluidity of your paint, because heavy body paint can sometimes be too thick to apply to your canvas, especially if you want a bit more of a fluid line. So to correctly load your brush, we prefer not to dip our brush into the dollop of paint, because that will contaminate your paint if you continue with that practice, but rather to pull off paint to the side. We call this like a landing strip. So you load your brush by pulling it into away from the center of your dollop of paint, and then you flip your brush around and you load the belly of your brush. Now if I hold this up, you can see that the paint is really all the way into the belly of your brush. So that is a correct way to load your brush, and then of course it will be so much easier and you will have a very good flow off your brush with your paint. And a good quality paint has a good quality of pigment available for you, so that really all makes a difference. So now that we know how to correctly load a brush, I want to also show you how to remove excess paint from your brush, and this is where your rag comes in. Sometimes you don't want that much paint on your brush, but you also don't want to rinse out. This is where you can use a rag or a kitchen towel just to pull off the excess paint, but you can still see there is paint in your brush, especially if you want to do a bit of a blending technique of sorts and not have as much paint on your brush as before, or even if you want to do a bit of dry brushing. Right, now it's important to know what it means when we say to lightly rinse your brush and to thoroughly rinse your brush. Now I just lightly rinsed my brush in my water, and you can still see that there is paint in my brush, and sometimes we use that in order to maybe mix a new color and we want to have some of the pigment still in the brush. But you will also hear me say thoroughly rinse your brush, and that is when you really get into the water and you give it a very good rinse. Let me just point my camera a little bit towards my jar so you can see how the pigment comes out into the water. And then also just check again to see that there is no more pigment coming out of your brush when you pull it over your rag. And blue can sometimes be one of those pigments that's really hard to remove. Right, now let's talk about when we are going to be mixing a new color. So right back to my palette here. Let's say, for example, we want to create a beautiful green. Now remember, yellow is one of your pigments that gets contaminated really easy. So if you want to mix anything with yellow, I would say that you must add very little of your other colors to the yellow in order to make a color change, just as a tip. So we're going to create a landing strip here and load the belly of our brush with yellow, and then use very little blue, and I will mix the two like so. Let's grab a little bit more yellow. Remember, yellow is a very delicate pigment, and a little bit of the blue. And now we've created a secondary color, green, as you can see. Now let's also talk about thoroughly mixed and loosely mixed. Loosely mixed means when we take some color and we just roughly bring the two colors together, but they're not thoroughly mixed. You can see the lines between the two colors, and when you drag it onto your paintbrush, you can, on your canvas, sorry, you can see there is different shades. You can see the darker blue, you can see the green, you can see the yellow. So that is loosely mixed. Thoroughly mixed means we will take the color and we will thoroughly mix the two together to form a brand new color that is thoroughly mixed. So that concludes this video on exactly everything that you need to know about the anatomy of a brush and how to load your brush correctly with paint color. I hope that you find this information useful, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next episode. See you then.